Hello everyone. In today's video, I will be reviewing Black Christmas from 1974. Black Christmas was directed by Bob Clark. As you all know, Bob Clark directed A Christmas Story. It's very strange and ironic how that Bob Clark directed a Christmas horror movie and a decade later, he directed a Christmas comedy. Black Christmas came out on October 11, 1974. 10 days after Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Black Christmas, when it first came out in 1974, it was not a box office success. It grossed $4.1 million at the box office. It was not well received by critics and audiences at the time of its release. Since then, in recent years, the film has gained a cult following and is considered a horror classic and has become one of the greatest horror movies ever made. Black Christmas was not the first slasher movie. However, it's one of the few films that made the slasher genre popular, along with Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween. Even though not being the first slasher film, it does take the same format and cliches of a slasher movie. Even though Black Christmas was not the first slasher movie, but it was the first holiday slasher film before Halloween. Black Christmas is about a group of sorority sisters that get together during the holiday break and celebrate Christmas together. They get a weird, strange phone call from an unknown stalker who makes death threats and nasty remarks on them. When one of the sorority sisters is killed by the stalker, they file a missing persons report. When the stalker kills all the sorority sisters one by one, the police realize that there's a killer on the loose. But little do the sorority sisters know how close the killer is in the house, in the attic. When people first hear the title Black Christmas, the first thing that comes to mind is they think it sounds like some stupid B-movie, cheesy horror Christmas movie. But it's not. There's really more to this movie than what people would realize when they hear the title of this movie. Director Bob Clark does a great job of showing how that even though Christmas is the most happy, holly jolly time of year, and most wonderful time of year, he points out in this movie that even bad things can happen at Christmas time too, that not everyone's Christmas is always happy, jolly, and that even tragedies can happen at Christmas. Unlike Michael, Freddy, Jason, Leatherface, as we all know who are killers in their movies, in this movie, we do not know who the killer is. Not knowing the killer is of the movie is what makes it scary. We don't know the killer's background, his origin, or his background story. The only thing we know about the killer is when we see his point of view of how he kills his victims, very brutal and very violent. Kind of like the same format, the way Peeping Tom kills his victims, but with no cameras. As I mentioned earlier, this movie takes the same format and cliches of a slasher movie that makes it a slasher movie. Like, for example, when the killer makes a phone call making death threats at his victims, that format goes when you think about Scream, When a Stranger Calls, and even before that, back in the 60s, when Mario Bava did Black Sabbath, the killer kills his victims one by one, and there's a last survivor. When the stalker makes a phone call to the sorority sisters, it's chilling, it's horrifying, it's very creepy. The movie's low budget, but yet it's very a little bit outdated at times. But at the same time, it still has like its moments of being very scary, chilling, horrifying, being very creepy at times. The dark atmosphere in the movie is a symbol about how bad things are going to happen. The characters of Black Christmas, some of them are interesting and some of them are not interesting. They're just like cliche, boring, just waiting to be killed off by the killer rather than get to know these characters. But the one character I love and admire and adore in this movie is Jess, played by Olivia Hussey. She's lovable, she's sympathetic. Her character is having a baby. She wants to have an abortion because she feels like she's not ready to become a parent yet. feeling like she has not figured herself out yet what she wants to do with her life before getting married, having children, settling down. Her boyfriend Peter, played by Keir Delay, is on the verge of becoming a priest. And when you join the priesthood, they are forbidden to get married, have children, and they have to take an abstinence. So Peter has two dilemmas. He either marries Jess, doesn't become a priest, and he raises a family with her, or he ends up agreeing with Jess's decisions of having the abortion, becoming a priest, and not marrying Jess. And it feels like that he will live in regret for the rest of his life, not knowing what he could have had with Jess if he had married her and had this child. Margot Kidder, as you all know, will go on to play Lois Lane in the Superman Christopher Reeve movies. In this movie, she plays Barb. She is mean and nasty, alcoholic, trash talk, and she swears like a truck driver in this movie. John Saxon, fresh off his success with Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee. In this movie, he plays Lieutenant Fuller. There's not much to say about his character, but he definitely does a good job, and he's definitely serious about trying to find out who was the killer. Ironically, a decade later, he played another lieutenant in Nightmare on Elm Street. Mrs. McHenry, played by Marion Waldman, the sorority house mother, is an alcoholic. She's like a complete mess. She has like liquor and alcohol in certain places in the house. Andrea Martin plays Phyllis, as we all know from SCTV and My Big Fat Greek Wedding. It was hard for me to imagine. I had a hard time seeing her in a horror movie like this because this was probably the first time I saw her in something more serious than comedy. And I will say, she was really good in this movie. Another example of a comedian playing a serious role. But for some reason, I still could not stop thinking about SCTV when I kept seeing her scenes in the movie. Alright, spoiler alert right here. If you have not seen Black Christmas, stop the video right here and go watch the movie. I don't want you guys to be spoiled about what I'm about to say about how this movie ends. Christmas probably has one of the greatest cliffhangers in the history of horror movies. Black Christmas ends on a cliffhanger where the character Jess is sleeping in her room and the killer is still upstairs in the attic. It's up to the viewers and the audience's decision on how Jess's fate ends up, whether or not she is killed by the killer or she survived. I'm not gonna lie, at first I didn't like this ending when I first saw Black Christmas, but ever since then, throughout the years, the more I watch it, I love and appreciate this ending now more than I first saw it. Roy Moore, the writer of Black Christmas, said that he took inspiration and based the killer off of serial killer Wayne Bowden, who was known as the vampire rapist. He killed 3 women on Christmas in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, in 1970. 1 year later, 1971, the 4th and final woman that he murdered was when he was finally caught. Olivia Hussey worked on the movie Roxanne with Steve Martin. Steve Martin told her that you were one of my favorite movies. At first she was thinking Romeo and Juliet because that's become one of her well-known famous roles and iconic roles that she did as an actress. But Steve Martin replied, no, Black Christmas. Olivia Hussey was surprised that Black Christmas was one of Steve Martin's favorite movies. As that, Elvis Presley, this was one of his favorite horror movies. He watched this movie every Christmas, and after when he died, supposedly that his family still watches every Christmas in honor and memory of their father, Elvis Presley. The title of this movie was originally going to be called Silent Night, Evil Night, but then they ended up changing it to Black Christmas. However, the American distributors were worried that what if the audiences would be confused, thinking that this was a blaxploitation film, not knowing this was a horror movie. Olivia Hussey said the reason why she took this role because a psychic told her that this film would become a hit and a success. Margot Kidder did not think that this film would become a hit or a success and did not have faith in this movie. However, she did not expect the film to have a cult following years later. Malcolm McDowell was originally offered the role of Peter. He turned it down, and he said that to this day he still regrets turning down Black Christmas. The release of this movie, They released a novelization based on the movie. Supposedly, it's very well written, there's more details and background on the characters. However, there is no copy of this book to this day. It's considered lost. He really agreed to do this film because his family was close by and he would visit them after when filming was done. Gilda Radner was offered the part of Phyllis, but she ended up turning it down because of her commitment to SNL. In the scenes where the character Barb is drunk, Bob Clark insisted to Margot Kidder that she would drink real alcohol, not fake alcohol, to make it more realistic of her being drunk. And Andrea Martin became close friends. The setting in Bedford is a homage to It's a Wonderful Life. Roy Moore based the character Mrs. Mack off of his aunt, of her personality. Despite not being a success at the box office in the US, however, surprisingly, this film was a very huge success in Canada at the box office. It was the third highest grossing film in Canada. According to Olivia Hussey, despite making a crazy horror movie, she said everyone got along very well on set, but Margot Kidder distanced herself from the cast. He did not meet any of his co-stars in the movie because most of his scenes were shot with Olivia Hussey. Throughout the years, there was talks about making a sequel to this movie, but when director Bob Clark died, that idea was scrapped, and instead they did a remake in 2006. Ebert hated this movie. Director John Carpenter was inspired from this movie for his inspiration for Halloween. It came down to deciding how they wanted the movie to end. Some of the writers, producers were not thrilled about how Bob Clark ended the movie because they didn't think it was not satisfying or a good ending for justice. But once they saw the movie, they realized that this was a satisfying ending to the movie. Review on Black Christmas. Hope you enjoyed it. Happy New Year and happy holidays. Whether you watch this movie at Christmas or not, my advice, watch the movie whenever you want, anytime, doesn't matter. Halloween, Christmas, whatever, you decide that. And also, if you want a really good horror Christmas movie, this is it. And also, my advice, skip the '06 remake and I still haven't seen the 2019 remake, but I really have no interest to watch that unless I do a collaboration with my friends on this movie for them. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit that notification button to get the latest updates on my channel.